two different sectors who have the same interest in helping and facilitating the foreign companies for investment in Myanmar. As you can see from here, two logos. One is UOB, United Overseas Bank, and the other one is Tractus Asia Limited. As well as we are very high pressure to have the representative from Myanmar Investment Commission or MIC with us today to share and discuss on the new current legal, regulatory, and policy reforms in Myanmar. I am sure you have many questions for the presenters today, and this can be raised during the panel discussion at the end. Or you can also write the questions on the paper, and then we will talk about it in the Q&A session. I hope you will have a fruitful sharing session, as well as the opportunities for the networking today. Without any further delay, I'd like to invite Mr. Dennis Mesero, an Executive Director and Partner at Tractus Asia Limited, to give the opening remarks. Please welcome Khun Dennis on the stage.
Thank you, Khun Min. The distinguished guests, UOB from the Myanmar Investment Commission, Khun Patana Unpanit, who is a member of the Myanmar desk at the Board of Investment, and the delegates from over 30 Thai and international companies that are attending today. Since transitioning to a market-oriented economy back in 2012, Myanmar has garnered interest from foreign investors as one of the world's largest underdeveloped markets. UOB Bank and Tractus Asia have been greatly satisfied with our investment there. UOB has been there for 20 years, and Tractus has invested since 2013. And it's been exciting to be part of the transition and also to help companies like yourself facilitate their investments in the country. The number of delegates here today and the broad that you're from reflects the level of interest that we've seen over the last 5 years in international companies have in investing in Myanmar. Indeed, Myanmar presents opportunities across a broad range of sectors, from infrastructure to energy, manufacturing, textiles, garments, and wholesale and retail trading. But as many of you know, there's quite a number of challenges to operating in Myanmar, legal, regulatory, and operational. And while it's taken a little longer than we would have liked to have seen, the National League for Democracy has recently made changes, a number of reforms to various regulations to facilitate investment and make it easier to do a business here. And we're going to be talking about some of those today, such as the Myanmar Sustainable Development Framework, the Myanmar Companies Act, liberalization of wholesale and retail trade, banking sector regulations, and we'll provide some key updates on the growth sectors in Myanmar that the government is trying to promote. We have the honor of hearing from representatives of the Myanmar Investment Commission, from UOB Bank's Myanmar branch, and Tractus Asia's own country manager for Myanmar, and they're going to provide an on-the-ground perspective on what it's like to do business and invest in Myanmar. And I'm very pleased now to introduce UOB. He's a fellow geologist. He and I have a common background, business executive and member of the Myanmar Investment Commission. To give the opening speech.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dennis. So, this seminar, this conference invited Mr. James, very short period. So I'm not prepared too much for the presentation, for the keynote speech. So anyhow, I think Mr. Dennis is getting director, Tractus Asia Limited, and then UOB from Thailand, UOB from Myanmar, and all distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I consider it is a privilege and honor to deliver the keynote address at this important seminar. Between Thailand and Myanmar, is a very long history, very long history. But current period, our leader went to Aung San Suu Kyi as a state councillor. He went to the abroad. First official abroad visit is in Thailand, Bangkok. Also, our new president, Wu Mie, the official first abroad to the overseas, only Thailand. Also, I remember your prime minister, current prime minister, first official prime minister abroad to Myanmar. So the meaning is that we are neighbor, we are very close each other, long history. So that's why Myanmar and Thailand is we can work together. Excellency and ladies and gentlemen, in the past 8 years, the government has initiated a wide range of reform to open the economic future to trade and investment. Necessary structural reform has been made to boost Myanmar's development through greater integration with the world economy. First, Myanmar is a strategic located area. It lies at the crossroad between China, India, Bangladesh, Laos, and Thailand. When I presentation, I will show the along the way. The economy combined account for about $150 trillion or 20% of global GDP. So Thailand and Myanmar is a lot of opportunities. Second, Myanmar is committed to economic liberalization and stable political transition. In keeping with the change and transformation taking place in the political and economic fields, a new investment law has been promulgated to attract foreign direct investment. Important change in asking peace in Myanmar. Also, prominent among them the Company Law. Under the 1940 Myanmar Company Act, it locally incorporates entity with any foreign shareholder is considered a foreign company in Myanmar. This was previously. Now we allow new company law. Foreigner can share up to 35%. This company we are equal to Myanmar citizen company. And this is we change just very last 1st August effective. The new law is expected to transform Myanmar corporate landscape when it comes into the effect 1st August. The MIC has also been reconstituted to take forward the momentum of change and transformation. We have a new management at the MIC, Myanmar Investment Commission, that is determined to turn Myanmar into a major regional trade and investment destination. The change in Myanmar investment climate has been recognized by the World Bank by the awarding the Star Reformer Award to Myanmar last year. Third, Myanmar is one of the Asia's fastest growing economies. According to the World Bank, its GDP grew by 6.4% in 2017 and 18, and is estimated to grow by around 7% in the coming year. Fourth, Myanmar aims to leapfrog its way into the future, reading on the back of rapid growth on mobile and internet use in the last 5 years. Now in Myanmar, 90% of people can use the mobile and internet. So we hope the bypass trade in capacity building through which other developing countries were previously required to pass during the process of economic development. Another is that Myanmar is home to young men and women with extraordinary talents. The team of Myanmar students ranked 6 out of the 163 competing teams from all over the world at the first international robotics competition held in Washington DC in 2017. The challenges to remain poor infrastructure is holding the back progress in realizing Myanmar potential for development. Myanmar energy potential has yet to be full. Myanmar remains one of the world's least electrified countries, not with understanding natural gas and renewable energy resources. We are aware that lack of sufficient and stable electricity is a major challenge for promoting investment. So, also Myanmar port also need to be upgraded and expanded to meet growing demand. So, despite the challenges, business opportunities are still abundant and the critical need for foreign direct investment remains. For investors, these challenges can be turned into the opportunity. So looking at our bilateral cooperation between Thai and Myanmar, we are confident that we can attract more investment from Thailand following the prevent company law which is become effective the beginning of this year. The recent year, Thai investors have shown being interested to invest in the wide range of the sector, including the trading, banking, manufacturing industry, livestock breeding, service and electricity generation. So last month, the chairman of MIC visited here to make presentation inside Myanmar at the Shangri-La Hotel. After meeting with the Thai CB company and some of the big retail company, we promised to Thai investor. Within 1 month, we get the land in Yangon or Mandalay. Within 2 months, how to get the power? We promised to get it. Now we try to get all facility, this big Thai, 2 or 3 Thai investor. At the Yaoundé region, farming, a lot of farming, chicken farming, also Mandalay region, Moonstate also, Yangon also. This is we provide. So Thailand is the third largest investor in the country. Currently, 117 project with investment totally $11.1 billion has been permitted as of June 2018. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Myanmar has much to offer the promising investment destination. Thailand, in turn, has been promoting successive economic development scheme for over 50 years, successfully becoming an upper middle income country. So, this present opportunity for productive partnership, we can complement each other. To conclude, let me simply say the time is ready to invest in Myanmar. So, as Warren Buffett would say, opportunities come infrequently. When it's great goal, put out the bucket, not to the template. So you have the good chance. So welcome to all of you. We try to support whatever you're necessary and any difficult in Myanmar. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and right now we will now focus on providing an overview of banking sector. Let me introduce Mr. Loy Thai Cho. Mr. Loy is currently the country head of UOB Yangon branch. He has been in Myanmar for 4 years since the branch inception. Before Myanmar, he was based out of Thailand, UOB, for 5 years as deputy head commercial banking. His coverage in Mekong region for the past 5 years has been deepened. His understanding of business in this region. Mr. Loy, together with the FDI team in UOB, has been actively involved in advising potential FDIs who are planning to invest in Myanmar. He has over 30 years of experience in financial sectors, mostly in the area of commercial lending. Most of the Middle market and SME. Please.
Thank you for the introduction. Well, okay, I'm Loy. I actually cover the Myanmar operation of Yangon. Okay, today I will give a quick overview of the banking sector in Myanmar. Okay, UOB has been in Myanmar for a long time. Actually, we started our rep office in 1994. During the sanction period, we have been supporting the Myanmar companies operating out of Singapore. They do their procurement, they set up a Singapore office, and they do a lot of their procurement out of Singapore. Okay, in 2014 October, the branch license was given to the foreign bank. We were one of the first 9 banks given the foreign bank license. And in 2015 May, we launched our branch. And subsequently, 2016, another foreign bank license was given. So there are a total of 13 foreign banks in Myanmar currently. I'll first give a quick overview of the Myanmar market. Okay, for Myanmar, it's still one of the fastest growing economy in Asia. It has stabilized at about 7%, and probably will be seeing that for the next 4 to 5 years. Okay, the primary sector contribution are very agri-related at this point. The other one that's actually growing quite rapidly is manufacturing. Okay, agri see a flat. Okay, but this has picked up recently. Okay, the manufacturing sector is probably one of the key growth area for Myanmar. Garment is currently one of the fastest growing. There are a lot of garment companies flowing in from areas like China, from Vietnam, to take advantage of the lower cost there. Okay, the strong FDI net inflow kind of slowed down in 2016-2017 because of the new government transition, but we believe this will pick up again, and we do see more force there. So that will help a lot for to actually move some of the manufacturing or labor intensive industry into Myanmar. And of course, the other area is a weakening chart, which is area of concern. Okay, it has been pretty stable last year, but over the last 2 months, it has weakened quite a bit, partly also because of the very strong US dollar in the region. Okay, this is just a quick overview. Okay, in terms of the FDI coming in from Myanmar is largely from Asia. Okay, China, Singapore, Thailand, Hong Kong, these are the key investors coming in. In terms of the economy, as I say, agriculture, manufacturing, these are the key areas. In terms of export, gas, garment, very agri-related like rice, fishery, construction materials. These are the key import coming in, and also gas. In terms of destination, it is still very Asia-centric. Most of it, if you notice, is China, Thailand, Singapore, Japan. So these are the key countries which currently invest or trade with Myanmar in a big way. Okay, the special economic zone in Myanmar, there are 3 currently. One in the north western side, which is Chao Okay, pretty much dominated by the Chinese. They have the pipeline which is all the way to Kunming. The second SEZ, which is probably the more successful one at this point, is Tilawa. Okay, it's very near to Tilawa is actually just outside Yangon. Okay, it's a G2G with the Japanese, and they have actually finished phase 1, so about 85-86 companies there. They have moved into phase 2. So this is probably one of the more successful SEZ currently. And the third, which is Dawei, which is supposed to be a gateway for Thailand, but that has not really taken off at this point. Okay, I will go into an overview of Myanmar. I think this is probably something which should be of interest to you. Previously, Myanmar used to have 4 state banks. Okay, they play a pretty key role in the past because a lot of the import and export activities flow through the state banks. And the private banks came about probably about 3 to 4 years ago, and they have been growing much more rapidly compared to the state bank in terms of business activities. So the state bank role has been diminished in a way, and we see a lot of the private banks are building up their branch network. Okay, but there are many private banks, about 24, and there's new one coming out. But the key is probably the top 5 or 6, which play a critical role because the rest are still quite small in terms of paid up. Okay, so these are the top banks like KBZ, Ayawadi, Cooperative Bank, or in short CB, Myanmar Apex, Myanwadi, Yoma Bank. These are the bigger local banks there. Only ANZ, which is non-Asian in a way, is from Australia. Okay, and in terms of equity, I think minimum at this point is 75 million US. Some of them are bigger in terms of equity injection. Okay, but the scope which they are able to perform, or the things they are able to do at this point, are quite limited because there's a need to protect the local bank. So we believe this sector will open up gradually. Okay, then there are 49 rep officers. Okay, what are the activities which a foreign bank can do in Myanmar? Okay, for a foreign bank, we are all a one branch license, except for the recently opened export sector, which central bank has opened up to the foreign bank. The 4 currencies currently onshore, US, Euro, Sing Dollar, MMK, which we are allowed to trade on. And for credit of interest rate, for foreign currency, as a foreign bank, we are allowed to determine what kind of deposit rate we want to pay. Okay. About 10 to 13%. Okay. So in a way, it's regulated. Okay. Low interest rate, likewise, for foreign currency, we do have a free hand to pay what kind of rate we want to charge. Normally, LIBOR driven. Okay, but again, MMK, it is in a way regulated. Okay, the other point which we have to take note is the single obligor cap. Currently, for the foreign bank, if we do lend, and this does not only apply to the foreign bank, it also applies to the local banks. When we do lend to any group, we can only lend up to 20% of our paid up. So like in UOB case, in Yangon, this I'm referring to onshore lending only. Okay, it doesn't apply to offshore. So we can have a cap of about up to US 15 million at this point. Okay, and the collateral which we can take on for foreign bank in Myanmar, okay, there are some challenge there. Currently, we are for foreign banks, we are not allowed to take on title to lands, right? Because so in other words, even if a customer will give us a land to mortgage us the land to give them a secure facility, we can't do that because we are not allowed to hold title. Okay, what we can do is we can take an assignment of the lease, or we have to arrange for other alternatives. Things like movable assets, equipment, yes, this can be registered. The other point to take note is for mortgage at this point, you can't register in Myanmar because the registrar is still not ready. Okay, so there are certain challenges if you want to take security, especially land and property. Okay, I give this slide to give you a comparison between what the local bank can do and versus the foreign bank. Okay, for lending, now the local bank can lend in both MMK and foreign currency. They can lend to both local company and also foreign owned company. Okay, but because of the control of US dollar, when they lend out the US dollar to foreign currency, to foreign companies, some of them they will need central bank to approve. Okay, so for foreign bank, we can lend in both MMK and foreign currency, but we are not allowed to lend to local company except for the export sector, which has just been opened up. Okay, so this is something to take note. And lending to local company was opened up to the foreign banks, provided you collaborate with a local bank. Okay, so if I want to lend to a local company, I must work through a local bank. Okay, so that is permitted. Okay, in terms of account, okay, by resident, I actually mean companies that are registered in Myanmar, resident companies. If you come to me and you ask me, can my Thai company open an account in Myanmar, then that is non-resident and you probably need to get the approval of central bank. Okay, if it is a company registered with ICA, okay, which is the registration arm in Myanmar, then it's not an issue. Okay, so just to make some comparison here, for resident account which applies to both local and foreign bank, this is not just a foreign bank thing. Okay, operating account, what we call CASA, whether is it MMK or foreign currency, no issue. Okay, FD, yes, they do give MMK FD, but not to foreign bank. FD for foreign currency is normally given out only by 2 state banks. Okay, so there are some restrictions there. Okay, in terms of interest, yes, they do pay interest for MMK, but if you open an account with the local bank, foreign currency, you will not be paid interest. But we do understand that some of the local bank they actually pay. Okay, so sometimes the policy may not be strictly adhered to. Okay, for MMK, FD, and foreign currency, yes, do pay, no problem with that. Okay, for foreign bank, okay, we also can deal with both MMK and foreign currency accounts, but we are only allowed to open for banks or foreign companies, as I mentioned earlier. Okay, not the local company. Okay, FD for MMK, no, we don't. But if it is FD for foreign currency, yes, we can do it. Okay. Now, something to take note: as a foreign company, if you come to me and you say you want to have an MMK account, I can't pay you interest rate. Okay, that is a central bank policy. Okay, but foreign currency, we can. Okay. Okay, these are just how the comparison to give you an idea how is the banking sector like in Myanmar. Okay. More about UOB Yangon in terms of what we have been doing. for the last 3 years. We started in 2015. Okay, we started off mostly supporting our network customer, meaning our customers in Thailand, customer in Singapore. When they invest in Myanmar, we support them, right? Because these are our existing customers. Okay, we also collaborate with local bank to tap on the branch network. Now, this is an area which is important. We are a one branch bank, so what we did is we actually tie up with one of the local bank, which is a cooperative bank, CB Bank, and when a customer wants to deposit cash or withdraw cash, we actually use the CB Bank branches or the branch network to allow our customer to deposit or to withdraw cash. Okay, so we need to set up in order to serve our customer better. For UOB Yangon, we do not have a cash counter, so we actually make use of the CB Bank branches to support our customer. Okay. What we have also done is, as a matter of policy, we are not allowed to take security on or to take mortgage over land, but what we did is we actually talked to Tilawa SEZ, which is one of the more successful SEZ, and through discussion and negotiation, and because Tilawa SEZ is managed quite independently, they actually allow us to take conditional mortgage on land and factories there to support customers or FDI who are going in to set up the manufacturing plant. So we have done that. Okay, we have collaborated with the local bank to lend to the big local companies. We have been enhancing our trade product because the central bank currently is pushing for the foreign bank to support the local companies. So the only area which they have opened to us is the export sector. Okay, so we are moving in to do more trade. Previously, very limited opportunity. Okay, so now there are more. Okay, and of course, we also try to expand our cash capability, like settling of the renminbi offshore. So that central bank allows, provided the settlement is offshore, meaning that if a customer want to pay their Chinese supplier, okay, they may want to deal with renminbi, right? They will pay using their US dollar account or their MMK account. So the renminbi settlement is offshore, but we can't do it onshore. Okay, we still are not allowed to do that. So we do explore other alternatives. A very key area, which is the forex, okay, in Myanmar, currently still very limited. So we don't have a lot of hedging process in place. Very limited also partly because the market is not quite ready. We also explore forward. In fact, most of the deals currently are spot. We explore forward, but very short, premium is very high, and eventually the customer decided that they will just keep it open. So hedging is something which is still very limited. Okay, the capability right now in England is still very limited. Okay, so from a UOB Yangon perspective, we have all the deposit product, the loan product, which we are doing a lot of capex financing, project financing. Initially, a lot of it actually are more project financing because companies are coming in to invest. So, whether is it telecom project, power project, hotels. So we do that, and the term loan we give normally up to about 5 years. Okay, and of course we also give working capital to support our customers when they need to have to bring in the raw materials for their manufacturing. Okay, not a lot of trading at this point because foreign companies are not allowed to trade at the moment in Myanmar. So we are not doing a lot of trading at this point. Okay, but definitely trade financing is a key area because where we see the central bank is gradually opening up they have started with export, and they have said that they will move to import. But they will do this gradually because it is also necessary for them to protect the local bank at this point. So we will see a gradual opening up. Okay, and treasury services, okay, which currently are quite disappointing, is still at a very early stage. Okay, mostly spot. You don't have derivative. Okay, so it's actually a big challenge if you need to, hedge your chart collection on your US dollar borrowing. So that is still not feasible at this point. Okay, this is just our footprint. As I mentioned earlier, we support a lot of our network customers, okay, and mostly from Asia. So a lot of our customers actually comes from Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, Indonesia, and Vietnam. Recently, we have our subsidiary status. So we are also expanding in a big way in Vietnam now. Okay, just to share some of the so-called the loan structure which we have set up in Myanmar, and taking note that we have certain limitation there, like our single obligor cap. So that we do try to be creative sometimes and try to do things differently. Okay, for a start, oftentimes the offshore company will want to issue bidding guarantee or a bidding bond, for instance, or a performance guarantee. So we have been doing that through the banks which the applicant, is based, let's say in Thailand. They ask us to issue a guarantee, so we go to UOB Thailand or UOB Singapore. They counter guarantee us and we issue those guarantees. So this has been done, and it's pretty common. Okay, we have been doing quite a fair bit of this. Okay, this is a structure whereby it's an onshore-offshore loan structure. Okay, how this work is, okay, because of our single obligor cap of 15 million, certain financing needed may be beyond 15, let's say 20 or 30 million, example. Okay, so what we have done is we have engaged our offshore UOB, it could be UOB Thailand, it could be UOB Singapore, for instance, whereby, okay, part of the loan is given by UOB offshore bank, and part of the loan is given by UOB Yangon. Okay, but this setup you will need to have a central bank approval, okay, which they normally have no issue with. Okay, and UOB Yangon will also be the security agent most of the time, okay, of such a setup. Okay, likewise, there are companies who may not want to borrow, or they may not want to use their Myanmar company to borrow from offshore. So what they did is they set up a Singapore company, for instance, okay, here, and using this company to borrow from offshore, and they then come in as a shareholder loan. So this is another option which you can consider. Okay. Normally these are because either we have a single obligor cap issue, or there are times where actually the projects are very big, like the telecom project. So there's no way we can do it onshore because of the limitation. So we use the offshore route. Okay, but now the central bank is trying to encourage more of this lending activity to be done onshore. So we have also seen situations whereby some of the foreign bank and local bank coming together, providing plug deals or syndication to provide loan onshore. So all this, it has changed over time. I think the central bank is opening up more and more. Okay. Okay, and the collateral we can take. It's only assignment. If it is land lease, we can have an assignment. Mortgage is not feasible except for Tilawat SEZ. Okay, so what are the alternatives? We actually have gone for share pledge. Okay, like we take the shares of the company who owns the asset as a security. we take assignment over collection. We rely a lot on corporate guarantee of parent, because we fall back on the parent to support the loan structure, okay, or even PG and SPLC. So these are the common collateral which we have. Okay, challenges. I think the FX is a big challenge. Currently, it was pretty stable in 2017, but the last 2 months has seen the FX depreciating, the chart depreciating from 1350 to about 1550 level. That has stabilized, actually has come back. I think it's about now 1005, 1052 level. So this is probably one of the key challenge. If you are borrowing in US, you sell in chart and you collect in chart to convert to US to pay them, this is a very key concern. Okay, something which unfortunately we can't hedge the position at this point. Something to pay attention and take note. Yeah. What is the outlook for FNK? Well, we projected earlier that we will continue to depreciate, but we didn't expect it to depreciate so quickly. Now it has stabilized, central bank has stepped in. Okay, but I think because of fundamental angle, well, it may continue to depreciate. So this is something you want to pay attention to. Okay, FX please. Okay, political transition, positive outlook with the new government, and they are trying to do a lot of things, but probably it will take time. We need to give them time. Okay, skilled labor, this is another key area, because currently the labor force may not be well trained at the moment. So there are a lot of educational centers being set up jointly, G2G, to push up the technical skill of this potential labor. Okay, infrastructure rebuilding. Okay, still lack of infrastructure. I think there's a need for many more infrastructure in Myanmar. It will take time. Power supply, water supply. Like why Dilawa SEZ is successful, they managed to resolve some of this issue. They are able to provide constant power supply. But probably if you go to an industrial park that's outlined, yeah, you may face a situation, you may encounter some of these issues. Okay, and regulatory and legal is also still a challenge because the policy is still not clear, entirely clear. So the initial part of our first 3 years, when we do the loan structuring, we spend a lot of time working with the lawyers. What are the legal documents or what the legal, setup is acceptable, what is not acceptable, what can be registered, what cannot be registered. So this is still an ongoing process. So when you work on the deal in Myanmar, probably give a bit more time to cater to all this, because you probably need to spend more time to get all this set up so that you can get the loan structure moving. Okay, but on a positive note, we do see a lot of potential in Myanmar. Okay, we are there for the long term. UOB is there for the long term, and trade liberalization is picking up. Okay, sanction has been lifted. Infrastructure is coming in, although it may be a bit slow. Yeah, it's coming in. Okay, there's a big upside potential for manufacturing to come in because of the low labor cost. Okay, and a lot of the training institution has been set up to provide skill, to provide the labor force with the necessary skill. Okay, this is all I have. Probably if there's any Q&A, we can always take on the question later. Okay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Loy Kai-Chiu, for the presentation. And the next session will provide an overview of mechanisms for investing in Myanmar, created by legal reforms, as well as a brief sector overview and the Cost of Doing Business in Myanmar by Mr. James Meisenheimer, Country Manager at Tractus Asia Myanmar. Let me introduce about Mr. James. Let's call him Mr. James, yeah, it's more easier. So Mr. James joined Tractus Asia Limited for a year as a country manager based in Myanmar. His major responsibility is advising the market entry strategies to the client, a local market development, and project execution. He joins Tractus with 4 years experience working in Myanmar, conducting political and research, as well as supporting ministerial reforms at the International Foundation and Electoral System. Mr. James holds Master of Public Administration from Columbia University Schools of International Public and Affairs, the United States of America. Please, Mr. James.
Thank you, Conchita, and thank you, delegates, for coming to represent your companies here today and to learn about investing in Myanmar. So today's agenda in my presentation, I'll start going through the investment framework and discuss some of the legal reforms that we've seen that I think are important for all of you considering investing in Myanmar. After that, we'll go through a bit of the sector overviews, discuss a bit about where we've been seeing interesting opportunities and where there's obviously need for greater investment before drilling into the costs of doing business. Everybody always hears stories about Myanmar, the rise of minimum wage, the absurd prices people have to pay for rent. And this, as well as the project case studies that will come after it, are intended to provide some context for how Tractus Asia has seen clients go in and find more cost-competitive solutions than are available on the open market. So the investment framework. As we've already heard, the Myanmar Companies Law came into effect on August 1st, 2018, replacing the previous Myanmar Companies Act of 1914. In the process of updating this 100-year-old piece of legislation, the system has just become more modernized, streamlined, and transparent. All of you can register your company here through the MICO portal in Bangkok. There's no need to go over there with stacks of paper and to submit them to individual representatives and have consultations with them. That makes this process quite easy. Tractus did this the other week. It took about 4 hours, and we've already received our certificate from them saying we are a newly re-registered company. Other important provisions here, and there's a lot, and you can talk about this for hours. The key one being the Memorandum of Association and Articles of Association have been abolished. These were quite restrictive because the context of the law was developed in 1914, and so it wasn't modern. The new process provides for a standard company constitution, which is generally acceptable for about 70% of companies in Myanmar. And this allows you to hold online meetings, to receive documents via email, no longer having to do things courier. It just brings the process into a more organized and modern approach. But already, crucially, is the last point here. Foreign investors can now acquire up to 35% of a Myanmar company without changing that company's status from a local entity. Materials, and there's roughly 30 to 40 business activities that a foreign investor cannot engage in. This allows that opportunity. And while 35% means 35%, there are opportunities to develop your voting rights for shares, where as a minority stakeholder in the company, you still have a majority opinion on certain matters that pertain to that company. So a bit challenging there, and this is all new, so it's not been really tested by companies with DICA. So registration occurs under the company's law, and this is the first matter of business as you begin your investments in Myanmar. But incentives and the other additions do not come in under the company's law. Those are provided under the Myanmar Investment Law, which was updated in 2017. Through the process of updating the investment law, they created two different systems. So now we have the endorsement application and the permit application. The endorsement is for all investments below $5 million, and the permit is for all investments over $5 million. The key difference between these two in terms of process is that under the permit, you have to have a meeting with MIC in Yangon. So our honorable guest, Uwe Lin, will be over there presiding over your review of the application. If you're investing $5 million or below $5 million, it's all done at the regional level. So if you're investing in Shan State, you go to Shan State and you submit. However, there are caveats within that. Let's say your investment is below $5 million, but you are leasing state-owned land, or the investment that you're going to engage in has an impact on the environmental or local communities, then you're going to be required to go through the permitting process. So there's a bit of variances there to work through, but you have to clarify that. Generally, it's been a year and a half since this has been in place, and we can establish that, the 40-day working window and the 70-day working windows for receiving your certificate after engaging in your application is generally met. However, the main issue is the top one, and that's the lease agreement. In Myanmar, a foreigner cannot own land, and land opportunities for foreigners seeking cost-competitive land locations can be quite cumbersome. And so what ends up happening in a lot of situations is you have the government who has leased the land to a Myanmar citizen, but that Myanmar citizen cannot lease the land to a foreigner. So the Myanmar citizen has to go back to surrender the land to the government, and then the foreigner can engage in a land lease agreement with the government. That sounds kind of easy, maybe, but it can take a year, right? And that's a year before you begin the MIC application. So that's a major issue that we have seen time and again on all of the investments that we support. But after you receive it, after you receive the land lease agreement, you submit your application. Generally, within the 70-day period, you will receive your certificate, but you're not just going to drop off, the 21 documents required and then just come up in 70 days and expect to get it. You're going to have to liaise constantly throughout the process. With an on-the-ground support, talking with MIC, making sure your item is on the agenda, being involved on clarifying any questions that come up, and clarifying those questions quickly so you don't miss the monthly MIC meeting. So these are all considerations that are important. But after you get the MIC certificate, you'll be eligible for these incentives. And regionally, they're quite competitive. So the exemption period, there's 3 tiers of that. That depends on where your investment is located. If you're located in Yangon, in most places of Yangon, you're going to be a 3-year exemption, Yangon and Mandalay. But if you branch out into different regions, you'll be seeing 5- and 7-year exemption periods. Another area is if you're for export, you have exemptions on raw materials and semi-finished goods for production during the entirety of your investment. So it doesn't matter if it's 5 years that you're going to be exporting goods or 50. You'll have that incentive in place. But the primary reason you want to go through the MIC process is for the land lease. As a foreigner, you're not going to be able to lease land for longer than 1 year. So if you want to have security to your investment, if you're going to invest $10 million, you're going to want to have a longer term lease. And so under the Myanmar investment law, you're guaranteed a 50-year lease plus 10 plus 10, so 70 years in total. And that's a major reason to go through that process. So I'll briefly touch on this because it doesn't matter at this point. There's one special economic zone, and Phase A is 100% filled. Phase B is under construction, and that's 68% filled. So there's not a lot of opportunities to get into Tilawa, but these are the exemptions you do get. And Tilawa, being in Yangon, you also have a 7-year income tax exemption. Those are competitive and those are very nice, but the reason people are going to Tilawa is like we've already heard. It's for the infrastructure. It's for the natural gas, it's for the port, it's for the water purification, the sewage, and the constant power supply. But the future economic zones that do come on in Dawei and Jomphia will also be under this framework. And this is the one that has been most exciting to potential investors who've been on the sidelines for a while. Trading is prohibited for foreign companies in Myanmar. And it was only you can trade, but you have to manufacture domestically. So you're not able to just say, I have noodles from Thailand, I'm going to bring them in, and I'm going to trade them as a foreign entity. That would not be allowed. And it's been restricted to only those companies that are doing value-added manufacturing, and it just began to loosen in 2017 when the MIC said, here are 5 classes of goods that we're going to allow foreigners to trade in. That has since been liberalized much more further. And this came out in 2018, July, so it's still very new. But what you have is promoted goods for trade. That includes 24 classes of goods. And within those 24 classes, there's probably other goods that are also included. So what is unknown at this point is how far that goes. But generally, household goods, farming, agricultural equipment, and inputs, motorcycles, lubricants, all of those are included under this 24 classes of goods. And so this has been a very positive idea, but there also are capital investment amounts. So as a 100% foreign-owned entity, if you're going to engage in wholesale trade, you have to bring $5 million into the country. If you're looking at retail, it's $3 million. And in the first year, you have to bring half of that in. So that's quite capital intensive for some groups, but there's also a bit of ambiguity surrounding this because this is very new. It's possible that the capital that they're requiring here could be a line of credit, could potentially be debt, or it might just be you have to bring in cash $5 million. What is known, though, is that that money is not going to be able to be allocated to any other expenses. It can't be used for a warehouse. It can't be used for operating expenses of running your business to do distribution. It is purely for goods. And so some people are turned off by that because if you're a trader, you don't want to be running a warehouse and you don't want to be running distribution. But I do think this presents a lot of opportunities, and we've been seeing increased interest because of this new liberalization. So I hope this doesn't confuse you, but what I do want to draw on here is that no matter what, you have to consult. If you're considering an investment in Myanmar, you have to recognize, is this a promoted sector that provides me incentives? And is this the best incentives I can get based on location? Or is there something, and this can honestly be in Yangon. If you're in one location in Yangon, you're looking at 3 years exemption. If you go 2.5 miles to the right, you get 5. So this is very locally based, and you need on-the-ground presence to identify what is the best decision for you. And not only that, but how do I get the permit and endorsement, or before I even begin the process, if I'm looking at retail and wholesale trade, is my good permitted to be traded? And so the tip of the iceberg of who you would need to consult with is just DICA, Ministry of Commerce, Ministry of Ag, Ministry of Industry. That doesn't include everybody else below that, which might include Ministry of Electricity, might include Labor, and so on and so forth. So that's a bit of the framework and some of the key revisions that we have seen that are important. And we'll jump into sectors and give a broad overview here. So infrastructure is obviously really poor in Myanmar. ranking 131 out of 140 in World Bank's Global Competitiveness Index is not good. And we haven't seen a lot of push to cover the infrastructure build-out that's necessary. So with capital expenditure at 5.6% of GDP and expected needs of 224 to 320 billion, there's going to be a need for private investment to come in to support this. In the recent years, that's all been in telecoms, but hopefully we're going to see a bit more opportunities, and this all comes into the Sustainable Development Framework. So the needs of Myanmar were always clear, and this sprouted like a cottage industry of technical assistance that went into ministries to develop strategies for implementation of projects. Those projects just were never implemented, and ministries were stuck with tens of different overlapping strategies, development plans, priority projects. So what the Sustainable Development Framework has done is harmonize those and said, these are what we want to achieve by, say, 2030, I believe. And what it's going to also do is establish a portal where the priority projects are listed, and then within that invite private tenders to come in to apply to carry out the projects. All of that is really positive, and ideally that's going to lead to more projects on the large scale that need to be done, such as in seaports and river ports. Seaports are a source of chronic congestion. 90% of all traffic goes through Yangon, and Yangon can't handle that with 34 wharves. So one of these, previous incarnations of the master plan called for 15 maritime ports and 33 inland ports, and hopefully those do get built. Most ports are under private leasing right now, so what the government did was say, okay, Myanmar citizen can lease the port from me for 50 years, and now those Myanmar citizens are looking for foreign investors. The problem is the lease agreements are not great, and they're not going to entice foreign investors to come in. So that's a major hurdle on that end. But if you're looking at river ports, at a cost of about $20 per ton. And so the costs are quite high for that. And river provides opportunities because every major urban center is connected to Myanmar's 9,000 kilometers of rivers. And then lastly, dry ports. Myanmar's integration into ASEAN, Asia highways, Greater Mekong subregion, they all are going to require dry ports specifically along Upper Myanmar. Electricity is obviously very underdeveloped. We still get power cuts quite a lot, most of it coming from hydro. But this is an area where, I can say in 2018, we're starting to finally see momentum. The 2018 began with Ministry of Electricity and Energy announcing 4 major LNG gas projects that will bring on about 3,000 megawatts. And there's about 6 hydro projects which are said to be in their last moments of negotiation. So hopefully those projects, which would bring on another about 3,000 megawatts, would add the megawatts that haven't been added during the period of 2015 to present, because Myanmar basically needs to add 300 to 700 megawatts per year to meet the demand predicted to reach by 2030 of 15,000. Okay, and then now we'll step back from the large infrastructure sectors and go into a bit more operational. And the first one would be manufacturing in the garment sector. Manufacturing has been quite strong, and it's retained about a third of foreign investment last year, and a lot of that is going into the CMP garment manufacturing. Right now, garments account for about 20% of exports, and they want to achieve about 10 billion in exports by 2030, I believe. And so there's a lot of growth that's going to occur here, as Myanmar has one of the lowest wages in the region, which we'll see later. But right now you have about 500 garment manufacturers in Myanmar, and the appetite continues to grow. Just in the past quarter, I believe about 67 garment manufacturers were approved by MIC. So you're seeing a lot more effort here, or a lot more interest from groups. And you're seeing brands like H&M, Gap, Suit Supply, all having operations in Myanmar. Skilled and capital intensive, this is slower. And the information here is mostly anecdotal. But you're seeing what was promising to see is investments from Suzuki, Nissan, and Ford to develop assembly plants. And this is allowing consumers in Myanmar to buy cars at a cheaper price and of a higher quality than they would ever get from imports of used cars. And there's been some restrictions that have been put in place to stop the dumping that occurred for most of 2010 to present, where Myanmar was just given the worst of the worst Japanese cars that nobody wanted. And now you're seeing safer cars on the road, which is quite good, better cars on the road, and the consumers are getting them at a lower price. But this is all quite nascent, but it is the direction where Myanmar wants to head. And it's the direction where they're encouraging investment to occur. Agriculture is another area where they're encouraging a lot of investment. And this is an area that's been keeping us quite busy with our clients in the ag sector. You're seeing a lot of international firms come in and agri-feed, hatcheries, livestock breeding, and it's going to only continue. You're also seeing investments come in for the secondary industries that feed into primary inputs into those factories. And you're seeing the major factories expand out further into Myanmar. You know, Yangon was the first base, and now they're expanding further out to Mandalay, Kaya, Cayenne, different areas that are allowing them to get better exemptions and reach different parts of the market. Healthcare is another area that has just unlimited potential, I feel like. Right now, Myanmar is importing almost all of its pharmaceuticals. There's about five manufacturing plants in Myanmar at the moment. And what they're providing is just a fraction of what's needed. And we're not talking about like very technical and complicated medical equipment or pharmaceutical products. You know, the largest value of import is just vitamins and minerals. So you don't need to invest heavily in a state-of-the-art oncology plant. You can invest in a simple tablet factory, and it will be able to capture a lot of the market that's in there. In addition to just pharmaceuticals, you also have medical devices, which are also being imported, and all of these are another promoted sector by MIC, where they're trying to see more investment occur. Lastly, just to touch on consumer goods a bit, because a lot of Thai products fare well in Myanmar, and there's a lot of growth for more Thai products to enter the market. I think primarily through retail and wholesale trading, but also through manufacturing if you wanted to manufacture in Myanmar. You're looking at like 15% growth in the sector, and for retail space, they're looking at, you know, adding more space each year, because right now, like, to be comparable, at one point Myanmar had like one store per every 250,000 people, convenience stores. So they're now opening up more convenience stores, there's more malls opening up, and there's more grocery markets opening up. Metro will open in Myanmar. Currently there's only two major supermarkets. So you're going to see a lot of that. And consumer goods all the consumer goods are promoted under retail and wholesale trade. So this can be an easy entry for companies that are willing to take the risk. So, you know, we've gone through the legal side, we've gone through the sectors, and maybe now you're considering, all right, what are the real costs, right? Because what you see on the paper is largely this. Garment factories are closing because of wages, land prices are too high, who the hell would want to invest in Myanmar? And it's not that bad. So minimum wage is about $3.36. It was raised this year, and it was raised 33%. Previous minimum wage was about $2.40. Surely, minimum wage will increase over time, and ideally, the productivity of the worker will also increase as a rate of that. But this is the minimum wage, and you also, if you're factoring into social contributions are maxed out at 15,000 Myanmar kyat per person, which is roughly $10. And that's quite comparable to other markets in the region. Additionally, you all have to consider overtime costs. Overtime costs, if you work more than 8 hours or more than 48 hours, you're entitled to double your hourly wage. But the wages are competitive, right? The only one lower in the region is Bangladesh. And because social contributions are quite low in Myanmar, it's also a benefit to the manufacturers. Land is also always in the news because land is quite high. Now, note about this. It's complicated land. And the price that's listed here is the selling price of the land in the industrial zone. So just to give context to that, what happens here is the government, there's very few private industrial zones, if any, I believe. And so what happens is the government develops an industrial zone, leases land within that industrial zone to a Myanmar individual. The Myanmar individual then usually does not develop the land. They look for an investor to buy it off of them. As a result, you'll find variances within the industrial zone. So the $7 per square meter that's included for Bago, it could be above that, it could be below that. This is the average. And if you're a more motivated buyer, it could drop a bit more. But this is the general rates that we consider to be averages within these zones. And to give some context about where these are located, this is the pointer here. Okay. All right, so this is Bago, just outside Yangon. And then these are the other areas that are quite, this is Hintada, and Pathane Industrial Zone here, so also quite competitive. Monwad, which is the most expensive, is around this area in Upper Myanmar and Sagaing. So this is the national average, and this is Yangon. And so Yangon has different rates, obviously, right? On average, what we find the lease price per month to be about $2. Sorry, 1 second. Right. So we find the lease price to be about $2.91 per square meter. These other prices are selling prices. So again, this is a bit complicated because a foreigner is not going to be able to buy the land, right? So these are a couple of the major industrial zones. And the lowest occupancy is Shui Pitar up here, and it's the lowest value. Highest value is over here on Langtayar, and the highest value as well. So there's variances within all of these, but the opportunities do afford you different incentives. Most of these are going to be 3-year exemptions, but Mangdagar, which is not listed, but over in this area, will get you 5 years of exemptions. And to put this all into context a bit more, we've done a case study of a manufacturing firm in Myanmar. We did this across the region, and what you have here is the average prices for establishing a manufacturing firm across different countries in ASEAN. The largest input of this is wages, even at their substantially reduced level. But utilities are quite low, and shipping is quite high. But land goes either way. You can be looking at $33,000 a month, or you can be looking at $62,000. That's a pretty large variance, and it represents the complexity of Myanmar in finding a cost-competitive location. But as you see here, Myanmar is on the lower end of the operating cost, and it comes to about 430,000 per year. Sorry, I mean 208,000 to 289,000 per month, depending on the location, the skill, the labor that's necessary, and other items. But note that for electricity, this wouldn't include additional costs like diesel, power generator, and everything else that you need to make up the capacity that's not there. So a bit about some case studies to describe how our investors have successfully navigated Myanmar and found cost-competitive solutions. So the first one is a Hong Kong-based company that manufactures porcelain for tableware. Large clients are hotels and restaurants. So the goal was to set up a tableware factory in Myanmar and export directly to Europe. And they started this process early, and they were able to invest in what is quite unique. During Myanmar's socialist era, there was a lot of government-run manufacturing facilities. And what they found was a porcelain manufacturing facility that was run by the Ministry of Industry. This distressed asset was not very productive, and they were looking for an investor. And so the foreign company came in and said, we'll invest in that location. What they got was a general turnkey manufacturing plant affixed with all of the machinery. They still have to import some, but a lot of it is relatively good. And crucially, they got a natural gas line. Not a lot of natural gas lines in industrial zones. So going through this route of working with the government to identify a distressed asset that they were looking to offload provided them with a unique entry. This certainly isn't the standard, but this is probably the only example of a foreign investor investing in a state-owned enterprise in Myanmar. And how did they do it? This was quite a long process. So I talked about how a Myanmar citizen cannot sublease land or factory to a foreign investor. So what had to happen was the Myanmar citizen who was leasing it from Ministry of Industry needed to surrender the lease back to the government to sign a new lease with the foreign company. And then within this process, the foreign company had to establish an agreement of discussion, basically an MOU. The MOU set out the terms of how they were going to lease the land, the amount of workers they were going to take, the payments that they were going to incur, because the AOD, as Tractus correctly predicted, this process is going to take a while, and it needed to have some form to tailor in the agreement between the Myanmar government and the foreign investor. Otherwise, if it was just sitting there, who knows what could have happened. So the AOD was signed, and then we began the process of negotiating the leases. And this took about 6 months to get approval. And then within that process, it had to go up to the Attorney General, and then it had to go to the National Economic Committee. So this just goes to show the level of facilitation you need to go after an interesting investment like this. Since it was a state-owned enterprise, it had to go through the National Economic Committee. Now, somewhere in between here was the 2015 election. And as a result, the government could not enter into a new agreement. The USDP was told after Jopia was awarded to the Chinese company that they were not allowed to enter into any new agreements. As a result, we experienced this period of dead time in the period of when NLD won the election to when they took power in April, with nothing occurring. And then NLD took power and was able to get this through the National Economic Committee, MIC application process, and DICA registration. So all in all, this took about 3 years. Again, this is a case study as an example of what can happen.
It's a case study to show an interesting and unique opportunity of a firm that ended up leasing the price for $2.86 per square meter, which is comparable to about $31 per square meter in Langtayar and other areas of Yangon. On top of that, they were able to get a natural gas line, they were able to invest in a turnkey solution, and they were now able to begin production. Another small case study is related to agriculture. So, European client was looking at land in Yangon to develop a feed mill, and they wanted to enter into a long-term lease. And the price that they got was $14,374 per year, which is roughly 64 cents per square meter. And so you compare that to the prices of industrial zone land sale prices, again, quite competitive. But this was not easy. The land that they found was zoned as a steel production area. So what they had to do was go through the process of getting it rezoned, get a new land grant permit, and then they can be able to enter into a draft lease agreement. Again, this took a long time because you have to consult with multiple different agencies who don't always talk to each other. You're the only link. Ministry of Agriculture isn't going to talk to the Land Management Committee, which isn't going to talk to Industrial Zone Permitting Authority. Right? You're the link that has to bring it all together. Otherwise, you're going to be sitting for a lot longer. But it did work. They got a very favorable lease agreement, and they then almost immediately started their second application process. And this one was much faster because they invested into an industrial zone. And the price that they paid for that was $11,289 per year, or roughly 42 cents per square meter. Smaller plot, but faster resolution. What's ideal about the first plot they had, they now can expand, and they're looking at expanding into building a aquafeed facility. They've already built a chicken hatchery. So their appetite in the current market is quite strong. And that first investment, they will tell you, was well worth the wait. They now have the title for it. They can build new facilities on it. It still does require consultations, but it provided them the entry point they needed to secure land at a relatively good rate. So that's basically it. So we took you through the legal reforms, touched on a couple of sectors that were important, and then provided context to the costs and some case studies. I do hope that was informative, and if you do have any questions, please raise them during the Q&A.
Thank you very much, Jim. All right, before we cross into the next panel discussion, I think it's the time that people are waiting for. We're gonna have the coffee break, networking time for 15 minutes. The coffee, tea, and bakeries are served outside, so you can bring in the rooms because it's not too much space outside. Yeah, and the next session will start at 3:15. Thank you.
1, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
We still have more topic to go over before the panel discussion. And in the next presentation, Edwin will present on the opportunities and challenges of cross-border investment in Myanmar, drawing on his experiences as a business leader in Myanmar, as well as his position in the Myanmar Investment Commission and Central Executive Committee. Please welcome Edwin again on the stage. Please.
Good afternoon. So before my presentation, I would like to inform to all of you. First, thank you very much to participate in this seminar organized by UOB and Tractus Asia Limited. Now my presentation is not point of view from government sector, point of view from private sector. I need to show what we are challenges, what's the mistake long ago, why we are not developed, why we are difficulty, why we need your help. We need to help from our neighbors country, from Thailand and China. So we are very close. Just my keynote speech ready. We are very close. Long ago ready. We are same region, same nature, same character, same practice, but different government, different management. So we are a lot of difference. But now, in time, we need to amend our Myanmar to develop same as our neighbor country. So, okay. So, this is our sustainable and inclusive development for the Lake Kanga country in Myanmar. So Myanmar is a low cost. We do the capital and technology and scale are transferred. So industrial services are relocation. This slide is 2015. Sorry. Sorry, I forgot to close my phone. Before we hand over the power from military government, 2011 to 2015 is we call not democracy government. This is a semi-democracy government. So anyhow, we have the transport investment will be fair for all purposes. Because of we need the most important is we are Lake Kanga country, but we have we need a lot of logistic development. So this slide I will share based on logistic and other industry. So we are the 5 priority of fiscal prudence, non and efficient government, revitalization, agriculture, monetary and fiscal stability, and functioning infrastructure. Yes, our country since 1962 up to 1988, we are a lot of difficulty under the socialist system. So after 1989 to up to 97, our business grew up immediately. My first business partner when 1989 is Thai from Hajai. The company is a Bandancing Limited Partnership. We invest in Myanmar, very biggest sawmill in Myanmar when 1995. But at the time the government policy is very good. Free, everything free. Free is not binding too much. After 97, they mistaken the binding step by step. They worry for the currency. So they announced a lot of notification. Last week, I take a TV from Myanmar TV station. 3 days, the announcement. I repeat all story. Why just out there? And show the currency exchange. Why 1,500 immediately? Because of previously we mistake impact from last 25 years. So they control too much to currency, and then we are going to becoming legal to illegal business. This is first very mistake last 35 years. When we export, they not allowed to import 100%. 60% what the government they need. 40% they allow to our what we want to import from other country. This one we cannot make a balance. We cannot make a profit. After 3 years, they change. At the time, 1995, $1 only 250 just. What they announced at the day, all export earning, they cutting 60% is government, 40% is what we import. Government necessary goods and unnecessary goods. We cannot balance. At the time, 250 US, just 1 US or 250 is only 1 day, 450 at the same time. At the day, only 1 day, increased 450. So after that, they announced again 80-20. 60-40 not enough, 80-20. At the time, you know, currency exchange rate 750 up to 950, 1 day only. But this is the problem. Start from there. So the meaning is that they worry too much. Anyhow, Mr. J already explained already a lot of transform Myanmar. We have pillar 1, improving the legal and regulatory environment. Pillar 2, ensuring access to finance. Pillar 3, promoting trade and investment. Pillar 4, restructuring the state's role in business, enterprise, and service delivery. Pillar 5, building Myanmar human capacity base. Human capital base. This is, we have to. Before 2015, when we hand over before election, we have to draw this one. Before election, we believe we can win this election 2015. We must win. So we prepare a lot of. So now the policy changes. 88, just I know already, 88 to 2011. Okay, we don't blame each other in one location. 2011 to 2015, the last government getting the policy right. Okay, he handled it a little bit the right way, but not speed. Not speed. Because of that, 30 years, 35 years, or 40 years, all governments they are tied up, what we call, stability. They need only waiting there, upper comment. No comment, no do. But this one, very typically organized. Now that we start environment in 2016 or what, we have to sustainable development. So this is our goal. 2015, we have to $2 billion. We need to get investment. Mid-term, 16 to 2020, $6 billion. So long time, 21, 30 US dollar, $8 billion. Up to 2030, $11 billion. This is our target. We invite all of foreign investors, or we promote and we encourage our local industry. We not forgot local industry. So previously, we complained a lot of local industry. At the time, they not take care to they not emphasize to the local industry. You know, TLOIC says more later than our local industry. Local industry more than 30 industry in general. But still, we are not local industry law. What happened? Problem. We cannot sue any department. But before foreigner coming, still what SC says, they have the SC law. We work regular. At the same time, we request to the Netherlands government. Foreign investment law, we work on. But for the local people, we need local investment law. But this one, now we already finished already. So, I would like to share this one. Myanmar is not same as other countries, you see. A lot of border from here to here, 1,600 kilometers. This is India. This is from Bangladesh here, very small. And then this is from top to here, China, 2,100 kilometers. And then here, Laos, around 300 kilometers. This is from here, Tachi Lake up to Rendang, 1,800 kilometers. Our checkpoint between Thai and Myanmar, I will mention 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right, we increase so many checkpoints, but existing environment, they don't like to open so many checkpoints. Why? I don't know. So, for example, we want to open a checkpoint in Tiki, but border, but Yaudi and Kodong people, they don't like. Why? Because of business must competition together. We want to develop all along this border, the logistic and investment and industry. We can work together. All illegal will be moved less and less. Now, along the border, 90% of goods are illegal. Is it correct? Yes, at the border. So we can do only 10% for the legal. how to develop this country. We cannot get the tax, we cannot get the data, we cannot all money, all import US currency by transfer by illegal way. Are you agree? So cannot control the US exchange rate. This is a problem. So how to change it? How to control the exchange rate? We need to better trading border trade from illegal to legal. That's why I request to all of you, please help us to become legal and let's go together. And we invite all of your industry along the Thai border to move Yawali partner to come to here, to come to the all industry. We will provide the land, we will provide the energy. You can first factory in Thailand, second factory in Myanmar. And our skilled labor are working in your factory. But one type of labor, please come to Myanmar, working with other local Myanmar workers. You can advance to the skilled labor. This week I request all of you this one. We need work together. So this is Bangladesh, India, Myanmar is there. We call BCIM. Yeah, this way. You see our opportunity. This is a BCIMT, Thailand, including Thailand. I mentioned Thailand here. From Bengal to here, they can join China from Pune to cross the border to Mandalay, Mongla, Shanghai to there, Calcutta, and go to there, India. This is our opportunity. A sort of thing we can do. Not only thinking from up to Chaitio, up to Yangon, go to invest so many places, you know. And then SAS, South Asia Sub-Region Economic Cooperation, under developed by ADB, ADB Bank. Year 2020, they have ready the highway road. You see, this 2020 finished, the cargo car or our passenger car from Middle East, Pakistan or Saudi or whatever. The car, the trust must go to come to here. And then you see our Greater Measure Agreement, our highway road nearly finished 2020. EH1, EH2, EH3, EH4. So this one, the car at there, that's just on at the border of the Bangladesh, India, they can cross the Myanmar to go to Thailand or other countries. So at that time, our big brother China, you know, sleep, they ready, they come here to go to up to Middle East. So China OBOR is start from this idea. That's why China government very clever, very smart, waiting the Middle East logistic development and logistic development of ASEAN, North-East South corridor and North-South corridor, East-South corridor. After that, he came in OBOR. I understand. You want to take advantage to use this our logistic. And yeah, this is China Myanmar oil and gas already agreement already. Okay, sorry. Last 2 weeks I just had operation, so a little bit tired. And this is it. You see, China idea from here, from China to come to Laos and Thailand and to come here. So this is it. This is the China way. Also here. This is China idea is very interesting, you know. Second thing, yes, geostrategic importance of Myanmar is China 1 by 1 rule. It's very important. But you see Japan, sorry, I see here not easy. I see here cannot see. But so anyhow, so Yunnan, Japan, Eastward corridor, they have to interesting investment in Japan, you know. But at the time, India, you see India, that is India Northeast. India Northeast is Mizoram, Bata, Manipur, Nagaland. 4 provinces, they are landlocked, very far from Calcutta. What they are planning? You see, they go to this is sit to it. They go to from Calcutta to here to use this way, you know. And then they go to this way. That area, how many people million, you know? 550 million there. If they are not east here, we are not West Shanghai region. So they are not east here. Bore, We are northwest Rakhine. Total 600 million there. So we can take advantage of a lot of logistics. So that's why India prepared. How to prepare, you see? This is also China. We are the between two biggest population countries, Myanmar and Thailand. Two biggest population countries, 1/3 of world population. We are asleep. We are never hardworking. We lost a lot of time. That's why at the time China prepared from Wuhan to go to Mandalay, to go to Naypyidaw, to go to Mumbai, to go to Changchun. This highway and railway, very soon we are going to approve with China. So this is a lot of opportunity. Only you're not thinking Thai-Myanmar border to do it illegally. So that's why India go to this way. India prepared already. This is the northeast. We are northwest. Prepared already. This is blue color is the India financing. This is Thailand come here. So connect there. And then second thing, you see China go to Myanmar from Burma to Mijila cross by bus. Go to container here. Also India come to here. And then second, previously China and India too much very far away. Now they use only 3-day driving from India border to China border, cross Myanmar. Along the way, you can open a lot of logistic center, the car parking, rest house, restaurant, and then restroom, everything you can do. More than per day, 100 by 100 car cross from India to Myanmar, India to China, China to India. This we have to take advantage. Also, China consider for Thailand. Another way, China consider from cross-border here, go to Taoji and Tachile, they go to Thailand. Also, southern Thailand, they go to Myanmar, up to Myanmar, they go to Thailand. This is China interested. A lot of China investors, they study very. So other than India emphasize to China, Thailand, go to Thailand, how to go. They know this one. So that's why our Myanmar and Thailand investor work together to take advantage investment in logistics and other hotel and tourism and restaurant and other industry. We can produce any kind of your manufacturer along the way and you can export to India, you can export to China. Not only thinking from Myanmar. This is my advice. Are you looking at this point? Only your small industry must move to Myanmar to invest along the way of the logistics, OB, OR, whatever you can invest. We ready to support you, ready to provide what you need in Myanmar. Our new MIC, we make decision. You need the land, we will compromise local government. Government had, now our new government collect a lot of state and region government, which land are under the managed by government. Now, we're not thinking for the monopoly and land speculator ownership. We're not thinking. Myanmar has big land. We can find the land available. Now, CP, farming, Ilauri region, Magui region, we give them 2,000 acres. Immediately, within 1 month, they will promote, they will develop there. So that's why now our government, our new MIC collect the data, which area, which land are available, and which area, how to provide the electricity, how to connect the national grid. We already compromise with the electrical ministry. Okay, so we are ready to point out the 8 point of the dry bulk facility. I welcome you who can invest in dry bulk in Myanmar. You know, Lanchapa investor already visit Myanmar so many times. Now it's a Yangon 2 place, Mandalay 3 place. Also, yellow point, we need a lot of dry bulk area. Now, here also a lot of dry bulk. Dry bulk meaning including Bandia warehouse facility and so the logistic facility we allow it. Oh, this is a final use. Mandalay and Yangon is a major. North and south, east and west. I take the time. We are east and west to the 9 road develop. North and south, 5 road develop. We are going to develop. So along this develop between China and Myanmar. Is it China? Is it Thailand? Is it India? Why we can do everything? You can consider, you can imagine. But policy or law, whatever is said, Mr. Cheng already explained. So we can do, and this is the last important. This is we are considered the DC put down this one. From Nowadays, and then we are Bengal. From Bengal to here, not only 250 kilometers. We can straight away to the DC put. Going to the west, the Middle East. This is our consider. This is the latest plan. So this is I will explain. Okay, investment opportunity, you can study, you can copy. We have the development of labor incentive, development of agro-based, development of value-added industry, development of human capital, formulation of effective investment policies, the supporting of the long-term strategies, improvement of the necessary infrastructure. This is we are done. Right on paper, we have to do practically. We survey. We have to establish a lot of poverty to develop. Also this one, China-Myanmar border, what they do, I want to share. Because of China-Myanmar, 2,100 kilometers. Myanmar-Thailand, 1,800 kilometers. Why Thailand cannot do like China? China do, how to do? Here, see. When our state council office is there, we already signed this file. Already agreement. Where? What do we do? Here. Here. You know, two country, one industry zone. Cross-border industry zone. They provide the financing, they provide the technology, they provide two business people, two country business people invest together, make production, and we export everywhere. So two country, one zone here, three zone. Here Mikina, this is Mikina here one zone, one more here one zone, one zone. Three zone, three big zone, two country, one zone system. Yeah, this is our Chinese, we already implement this one. We were going to sign coming next 2 months. So this is I share last 4 years from Bengal from Myanmar to up to the China moment along the Mekong River. I follow with the Greater Mekong project. So this is my presentation at the Tachi Lake of this is near the Zhao border and Thai border. This is the Tachi Lake, Thai custom officer. So along the way, what happened? I check. Along the way, I see a lot of illegal timber trading cross border between China and Myanmar, between Thai and Myanmar. See, this is at India border by bicycle. So this is a Zhao border, Thai border. A lot of order, not with license, order without license. So this is Myanmar border. So why we cannot do the legal way according to the regulation? Because of why? Both government, both checkpoint, all officers to make money by themselves, to corruption too much, to make difficulty or private sector, or a lot of step by step. That's why now we try to reduce. We need to the announcement what they need. Maybe 1 to 10. Okay, we have to prepare 1 to 10. Cannot change. First day now 1 to 10. When we submit, no 1 to 5, no 1 to 5, no 1 to 10 ready. Another 5 factor, we have to find out in our place. Not easy. So cannot change easily. So this one, what we were doing, public information through media, sharing knowledge and experience in the technical top seminar of the society. More progress could be made between Thai and Myanmar. I would like to. That's why I request all Thai investors, please, we can work together. Because of we are already. I think 2 generations happy and enjoy along the border, happy and enjoy illegal trading. But next generation, I don't want to allow to do the illegal investment, shadow investment, money changer. We have all border, we have allowed to any kind of currency, baht or kyat, yuan or kyat, whatever. Now our government consider they will allow very soon. All Myanmar small bank open along the border. Buyer want to give kyat, you accept. Buyer want to give baht, we accept. Also Thai side, buyer want to give baht, you accept. We allow for government agreement how to transfer the money formal way. Now we transfer the informal way. That's why we cannot collect the data. We have no data. How many dollar go to Thailand? How many dollar go to Myanmar? We don't know. Listen, you agree? Huh? That's why I request. That's why what we do. Challenges, rule and regulation. This is an opportunity. Challenges to become an opportunity. Both government must be meeting together. Strengthen law enforcement. Government center must support fair regulation, rule and regulation. Single window must not serve it. We need to train for promotion. This is our idea. We already explained along the border so many ways, so many parts. But some are not happy, some are happy. But next generation, I don't want to let all this lousy procedure, lousy situation. I don't want to hand over new generation, all Thai and all Myanmar. We want to live, we want to operate together like international say that. That's why action plan. Now we already made decision ready to reduce unnecessary complicated official procedure for government. You know, when 1990, I shipped the timber, saw timber to Renau, FOB Kota, 1990. The whole budget I charter. I shipped from Yangon to the coastal line to Renau at the Kota. After I cleared the custom, Thai custom not set. Oh, this is illegal. No, I am legal. But Thai custom not set. Thai government not accept. So Myanmar government also not happy at the checkpoint. But I don't get. I do all the formal way. Finally, I went. Finally, they have no rejection. They see all documents are legal. I hand over to my customer from Hajai. I change it on the ship. The ship go to the Hajai at the southern port. So at night, I sleep in the Renau. At night, midnight, I hotel. Somebody knock my room. Open 3 men coming inside the room. Next time you not come legal way. They show the jacket inside the pistol. Next time you come legal way, I will shoot with you. So second time I don't want to do that. And this is my experience. But this not good for long generation, you know. That's why. And to notify release of regulation. Government, what they did, they release everything. So our private setup easy to follow. Second time, to promote law enforcement and strengthen enforcement mechanism. This one we need both government together. So please, where is the BOI officer? How we can work together at the border, how to develop legal way. And then to take action according to the law. And last, to protest those who follow the rule and regulation. And this is from my heart. I want to do this one for future generation, both between Thai and Myanmar. And let's go together. So, in conclusion, through cross-border, we do believe our trade between the countries will become formal and move from legal to illegal to legal. Through cross-border, we can transfer and share our culture and people relationship. Through Bangladesh, China, Kenya, Myanmar, Thailand, we can group together for our border area people. So China and also other colleges, our GMS country, a lot of similar experience this problem. This will take at least 2 decades already, at least 20 years already, and maybe at least 2 generations already. How to improve? We are not follow the legal way. The big brother coming, the China, another big brother coming, India. They are bigger than, their power is bigger than us. Is it correct or not? Are you agree? They are bigger than us, you know. China coming with high speed flow along the border. We are not legal way. We die, everybody. This is my point of view. So our good relationship, Thai and Myanmar people, especially new generation, we work together according to the regulation and develop together and protect who are coming from somewhere to illegally. Yeah? I don't want to talk. They will do or not, I don't want to talk. But we have to prevent how to develop future. This is my idea. Yeah? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much again, Levin, for the very clear presentation about cross-border investment opportunities and challenges. And now I'm sure that everyone must have the many questions on hand after have heard from many information from the speakers. So right now, I just would like to welcome back 3 speakers on the stage, because we're gonna have the panel discussion right now, and also Kunyutana Saitai, Senior Vice President, FDI Advisory, United Overseas Bank, Thailand. On the stage, please. Just let me introduce a bit about Kunyutana. Kunyutana Saitai is currently Head of Foreign Direct Investment, FDI Advisory, United Overseas Bank, Thailand. He has extensive experience in business development, customer relationship, and cross-border banking businesses. As one of the key members in UOB's Foreign Direct Investment Advisory business, his primary role is to strategize and develop both of inbound and outbound investment and trade opportunities, as well as mobilize and coordinate internal specialists across the bank network. He also works with government agency and professional service provider to jointly engage and facilitate the entry of growth of Asian and global enterprise expanding in the ASEAN countries. And he will be the moderator for the panel discussion.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you have very overwhelming information starting from banking industry, market, cost of investment, regulation, as well as the country development plan, infrastructure, a lot of information. And I'm sure that you cannot remember 50%. So this session is going to squeeze these gentlemen to summarize the key items that we can take away, and hopefully the discussion here will give you some benefits and something to think about when you want to invest in Myanmar. So to cut the story short, I want to start with the first question. In general, you are from different industry, different areas of expertise, but you are on the ground in Myanmar, right? And you have came across a lot of cases, situation, customer, partners, discussion with the locals and all that. From your experience, what are the key developments of the country that can help facilitating new investment or FDI, or speed up the FDI into Myanmar? Maybe I start with Kun James first.
So I've been with Tractus for a year, and Myanmar has been pretty active during that year. So we saw a new foreign investment law, or new Myanmar investment law be implemented, new Companies Act be implemented, some 12-point economic policies from NLD, a bit more clarity on what their positions are, even as ambiguous as they've been stated. But where I've seen the most interest was in the liberalization of retail and wholesale trade. To a lot of people, that really blindsided them. This was not something that we knew about. When it came to foreign investment law or Myanmar Companies Act, we knew those were in development for 3 years. This was in development for 3 years, but its announcement really shocked every company that was in Myanmar, and a lot of companies that were outside it. And so accessing the market has always been the major interest of foreign investors. And that was quite restricted to those that were going to manufacture or those that had a joint venture. The idea of providing a full liberalization, even for a segment of goods, it's quite beneficial to as a statement to investors that, look, we are liberalizing, right? We are giving you access to our market. It has been slow, but this is a major step towards liberalizing other regimes that are restrictive to investment in the country. And so I think that has been the biggest shock and biggest point of interest that I've seen from clients that are in the market who have already invested and see new opportunities, as well as potential clients or potential investors that are on the sidelines and have been on the sidelines for 5 years. The announcement of this really created a new wave of interest in Myanmar, and that's where I would point my direction.
Okay, thank you. How about for banking sector, Lloyd?
Okay, coming from the banking sector, well, we started the branch about 3.5 years, 4 years back, and the process then was pretty bad in the sense that it was very difficult to fund, and given the scope of the foreign bank, very difficult to fund the projects that are taking place in Myanmar, which in other words, it means that for FDI to come in, it's going to be very difficult if they don't have the proper funding to do the job there. So the financial sector, opening up of the financial sector is actually very key if the economy is going to kick off and move. Although they are trying to open up, but it's still not fast enough. There are a lot of things which probably at this stage, if you want to finance a big project in Myanmar, it's going to be very difficult to do the funding onshore. That's why we have to look at offshore structure. If you want to do or you want to structure a loan and you need to take certain security, at this point is also very challenging. So opening up of this area is pretty important, because otherwise I don't see how the FDI is going to come in and to move their project, because the funding capability at the moment is very limited. And the other part about hedging, are we able to hedge all this structure? At this point is still very limited. So where I see probably the central bank is of course trying to open up and also trying to protect the local bank at the same time, but without actually moving this forward quickly, it's going to be quite challenging to see how these FDIs come in to finance the big project. This is the challenge we faced earlier, but although it has been improving, but probably it's not fast enough. And by opening up this sector quickly, I think it's going to help the FDI to come in a faster way.
But there is no specific timelines at when central bank gonna finish all this opening up?
Not yet. I think they are trying hard, but also because the process is quite archaic. Like registrar is still very manual. It's not computerized. You see a lot of challenge when you're on the ground. When you take the law, for instance, it's a British law, but it's very old, so it has to be has to be changed so that it can fit to be suitable for what we are doing now. So all these are taking place, but the pace is still not as fast as we hope. So even as foreign bank, when we are there, we are also facing a lot of challenge. But what we have been doing now is to look for alternate ways to do the financing. But ultimately, if you want to finance the bigger project, you need to have all this process and set up in place. Otherwise, it's going to be quite difficult.
Okay, thank you, Kulai. And pass to Michael. From the public sector perspective, what are the top one or two things that you think the Myanmar government need to push forward in order to achieve your FDI target that you just presented?
Yes, we need a lot of changing the procedure. But the question is one or two, which one move faster? more firstly is my personally is must clear open everything. To come in, invest in Myanmar, procedure must less procedure. All procedure, banking, less procedure. Now is first, this is a establishment of procedure for FDI. You want to release, you want to easy, simpler and simpler. Second, for the logistic development, we are now, our highway are very vast and the system of beauty is very wrong. So we're going to change, say as Thai or China or India or Malaysia. That's what BTO. Highway is a government, no money. Give the private company 30 years, 40 years, BOT. They not develop road, but they charge the people. So the cost high and high. This is we suffer at least 50 years already. Now we are going to change BTO. Government announcement, this road development. Who come in according to the standardization, specification, and the payment will be how many years we have to take time. We must schedule and then we tender. But government after bid, transfer the government maintain the government control the highway to charge very low cost. Now Malaysia, 1 kilometer only 10 cents, Malaysia 20 cents. China 1 kilometer 20 cents, China. We are 1 mile, 1 kilometer, we find the charge of 1,000 charge, very expensive. That's one I would like to change first. Second, electricity power. Whatever power, hydropower, maybe the coal power, any kind of power is coming up immediately. Why they worry a lot of environmental? So many people talking environmental. But environmental is, I'm not talking environmental, it's not important. But we need the urgent power. For example, the patient, our SME or our industry are, our SME, our industry are now in the ICU room. We need oxygen, we need everything. But still talking the environmental, how to do? We need to save our life fast. We need energy, we need logistic cost. We need a simple procedure. We must put this one first. I already explained recent government also. Yeah, but Myanmar was. You want to get a daughter-in-law. So you want to get a son-in-law. You allow your daughter to sleep with him. Very simple. You want to get a son-in-law. You allow your daughter. You want to get a daughter-in-law. You allow your son to stay with her. Give and take, Cannot take and give. So everywhere, give and take. We must give fast, and we can take. This is both sides must be fair and square. So foreigner can happy. So for the banking license, yes, I apologize on behalf of previous government. Take long time. Because of I know already. A lot of local banking, prevent, protect. So I already at the one seminar, I already complained to them. You are worried the sky drop for you. No, let's go together. Foreign bank coming. Why you cannot enjoy together? Foreign investor coming and foreign investor coming. Foreign investor come together. We get a lot of job opportunity. We can transfer the technology. We can get a market with them. Yeah, this is important. The last important, very important. We have to review our local interest rate. If we compare, bank interest rate are more expensive than other countries. So they worry. Foreign bank coming, foreign investor coming, foreign investor loan from their foreign bank, low interest. Our local people loan from government, our local bank, high interest. This one we cannot compare. We cannot compete with them. Why not? We change rate, same as our other country. Why we cannot change? Because of our nature of our Myanmar practice. Mostly people are not interested in the manufacturer. They want to put the bank and they eat it. They want to get the bank interest. A lot of people. This kind of behavior, this kind of mindset will be changed. This is my personal. They like or don't like, I don't know.
Okay, thank you, Michael. And how about does the government has the time frames? We know that they want to move in this direction to improve the domestic environment and investment environment. But is there any time frames that, because most of the investors say the development is quite slow and all that?
Yes, my slide I showed that in 2015, 2013, 2020 we have to target. But we have to change a lot of things. First, government, all governmental procedure. How to smoke, how to fast. This is depend on all government staff and officer, their mindset. We need to change. This is not easy. But we need to take time, not long time. We have target already. I cannot say detail. Because of our current situation, very old house are damaged everywhere. Fencing, not quality. Truss, not good. Flow, not good. Even the other part also very dangerous. Also roofing, we can see the sky. Which part we need to prepare fast? We cannot prepare easily, but we have planning. Our economic committee and our Myanmar Investment Commission. Now, company registration, you know that. You apply online. Within 35 minutes, drop, you get the license. You get it. I showed one of Thai company, Dongga Haba. I applied myself for him. 25 minutes, get the license. Previously, at least 2 months, 3 months. Now, within 25 minutes, online application. So, we are going to the e-government now. Within 2 years, we finish e-government program. If e-government finish, a lot of difficulty are going to get less. So also banking, we're going to develop banking. We cannot wait forever, long time, same as last year. We have to move forward. Now we need people who will follow us together. And this is very important. People meaning not only the private sector. People meaning including the government sector must follow our leadership. What they want to do, we can support, and then we can succeed. But we need to help our neighbor country. Transfer the knowledge, transfer the private sector, how to develop, how to government sector. For example, I do it every time. Your BOI, I visit last year. OS. Your Thai BOI, OS. One step. You want to be invested in time, you just one step. And then I will finish one stop. Everything. This is BOI slogan. Now previously, long ago, last 10 years, 20 years government follow. This is Thai BOI, OS. We made the OS. One stop OS. So our Myanmar is just one thing stop. They don't move everything. This is our Myanmar one stop service. That's why we change this one. We provide everything, stand by for regulation, stand by for procedure, stand by for services. So we watching and change the mindset for our staff. But it's very hard to change. But mostly follow our idea. I think not too much longer, maybe next 1 or 2 years, maybe around after 2020, we have to speak. Now it's not speak. We have to speak after maybe around 2020, we speak to change. This is my experience. I hope was I believe.
Thank you very much, Michael. So there's a lot of developments, and I think the country is ready, to welcome the foreign investment. Well, a lot of opportunity though, but the coin has two sides, and the challenge or concern that the foreign investor might have. But I want to hear from the people on the ground, like these three gentlemen, that the people inside the Myanmar, your customer or your partner, who already inside the Myanmar, what are their concerns that you normally come across, and maybe perhaps you can share with the audience?
Okay, I'm coming from the perspective of banking, since that's where I am. Okay, if we are talking about the local companies, they are actually hoping that the banking sector, when they open up, they can actually bank with the foreign bank, because they they realized that a lot of time when the banking sector first opened up, for instance, if they need to issue a LC, or they need to buy certain, make certain purchases, and they need to issue the LC to let's say Europe or US. Sometimes the difficulty of having the LC accepted is a challenge to them. So to the local, and especially when FDI comes in. So if you talk to the local people, yes, they actually want to do more with the foreign bank. They would like to do more. And if the scope can be open, I think they will, is something positive. I think they will look forward to that.
Thank you, Claude. That's from the banking perspective, which is very essential for the business in these countries, right? Move on to James. As a consultant, you see a lot of different kinds of industries and clients. Perhaps you can share a little bit on your side.
Sure. I guess I'll take this from two sides. Those that have not invested in Myanmar and those that have invested in Myanmar. For the group that hasn't invested in Myanmar, the issue is what we just talked about with one-stop shop. Myanmar Investment Commission tries to be a one-stop shop, but as I discussed in my presentation, you need to coordinate with a handful of ministries, if not more than a handful, if not two handfuls, in order to get your application approved and to go through all the regulatory processes to ensure you're compliant. MIC should be able to exert influence on the ministries where a lot of these decisions are made, but they cannot. And so you have instances where ministries are the backlog. It's not MIC, but it's the ministries themselves. So if your investment is in agriculture, it could be that the Ministry of Agriculture is hung up on certain issues. It could be a land issue, so your issues are, in that regard, they're hung up on another area in another ministry. And so you're not seeing a lot of cross-governmental cooperation, and this is a major hindrance to investment. Secondly, the government has always had a communications problem, whether it is run by the former USDP or the current NLD. They just don't enunciate clearly a timeline for reform. They don't announce what they're specifically working on, what their priorities are, and it leaves a lot of ambiguity to investors. Some investors are content to navigate that on their own and gather whatever inputs are out there through consultations with ministries on their own agenda. But for those out of the market, that's something that is completely missing. If you're trying to get that information from Thailand reading the news, you're not going to get it. You're not going to get it from a ministerial website or even the state-mouthed media. And that's a major problem because you don't know about the good reforms that are being taken to encourage investment. And so you continue to sit on the sidelines. And so that's one issue that we usually come into, is that the narrative of Myanmar is not reaching the investors. The other narratives are reaching the investors, and that's not productive. And then if you're to go into Myanmar and discuss some of the challenges that our clients face, I mean, it's largely on the import and logistics. Key inputs to the goods that they're producing need to be imported. The quality of goods available in Myanmar are low, and sometimes not of good enough grade. The backlog of inventory at the port, the compliance you have to go through, the step-by-step process. Like Myanmar, I want to say, has 230 hours of compliance with border. Take that regionally, it's about 70 hours. Add on top of that chronic congestion in the ports, you have further delays. Add on top of that weather items that can delay discharge, you have further delays. And so a lot of our clients are on the production assembly line, they're ready to produce, but they don't have the inputs. I think the retail wholesale is going to augment that somewhat. I think those groups that are supplying key inputs to industry are going to say, why am I working through the middleman in Myanmar? Why don't I open up my own warehouse, have my own stock, and then even expand my business to other manufacturers in that sector? And so we are seeing some of that already. And that's going to improve the efficiency of the operators. But currently that's where I see the biggest challenge in Myanmar.
May I share some 3 points? Number one, because of here, audience is maybe mostly a young generation, some are same as our generation. Myanmar is under UN session. How many years? Everybody remember? Myanmar under session. Because of session, we don't want to. Okay. Under session, UN session, 30 years. So during this under session, what we can do the banking? We cannot TT, we cannot LC, we cannot everything. So we have to open the maybe the fresh company in the Singapore, also Bangkok, also Malaysia. We ship our product to the ASEAN, and then we make we shipment and we change the packaging in the Malaysia, also Singapore. For the banking, we open the account in Singapore UOB. Our bank, MICB, MLDB, open the account in Singapore UOB. All transition, our buyer from Europe, our customer from United States, they agree with the Singapore company, Malaysia company, and then Thai company, and then they TT to transfer to them, LC to them. But what about Myanmar side? I think one generation, they don't know how to open the LC. They don't know how to use the banking facility. No experience. Get of the experience. Now, session late. When we do the LC, when we do the banking facility, even the bank side, even the bank staff, how to maintain it. Also, the private sector side, the new generation, we don't know. Because of their practice, long time. Number one, we have to 10% tax fee. Total volume, we have to pay the 10%. So we go into the underprice. Second thing, investment, just not the retail. A lot of our retail and Myanmar people protect, not allowed to foreign retail. That's a matter. Not allowed to foreign trading. They follow. So foreigner cannot trade in. Foreigner happy, All foreigner happy to trade in. Under that, they are driver and they are relative friend. Under the Myanmar community, they invest. So they are not going to report to their account. They are not going to their profit report. Government cannot get tax. Something illegal, the police cash, custom cash. The real owner is not nominated in the company. The Myanmar people suffers. This is what I mean is previously my government mistaken not allowed foreign investment for the trading, but purchase long time already in Yangon. 10 years already under the Myanmar friendly. We call it the scheduled community. Now our MIC request all of them who are scheduled investment in Myanmar, please make re-registration according to the new law. We not take a share, we allow. We want to get the real one. So that's why. So for banking is really now under American session, now after American lip session, the banking facility is still not enough yet, not developed yet. But now they try very hard to IT development. Also, not bank side, even the private sector side, lazy to use the LC system, lazy to use the banking system. Very funny. Stay under price. We sell timber $3,000 per metric ton. But according to the license, $1,500. Another $1,500 we condition from Singapore. Still going on this one. Also, this is we have to change all this practice. We have to change all mindset. Not easy, but we try. It's very hard to change. This is important. So, request to all of you, please follow the regulation, not share investment. Still a lot of share investment from Taiwanese, from China, from so and so. Even in Thailand, a lot of share investment. But this one, we're going to change. And then, everything like, our clothes are dirty. We have to wash it, and we have to come in and iron and to make new one. This is, I show that Isabel is a very simple. And Myanmar can do. Myanmar people is they are very very smart. They can work hard. So we organize to chance
add on some interesting point. I think during the sanction period, what happened is because you can't bank here, right? Or the bank can't support, or there's no bank here basically. So what the Burmese company has been setting up overseas companies to do their procurement. And interestingly, a lot of them actually set up in Singapore, for instance. They do their procurement, they bring the goods in to Myanmar, they sell, and through the unofficial way, they get their money out, and then they pay off to the loan, to the bank. Increasingly now it's going to be very difficult because of very tight AML, KYC policies, and all these unofficial source of fund that goes out, let's say to Singapore for instance, and you want to credit into your account with the bank, it's almost impossible at this point because they are very strict. And so that's why to move away from the unofficial and to the official, probably as you said, is a better approach. And of course, central bank is also encouraging that you take this approach because for central bank is they want all this activity to go back to Myanmar instead of offshore, right? Because when all these businesses park their liquidity offshore, it creates a liquidity problem in Myanmar itself. Like the US dollar, they are all sitting offshore. So what the central bank is doing is to encourage all these activities, businesses to actually move back to Myanmar. And I believe they will gradually open up to the foreign bank to come in so that we can play a bigger role. So I think this is key. I think moving forward, this should be the direction.
Okay, thank you, Kuloy. We are running out of time. Just to conclude that Myanmar, I think a lot of opportunities, but a lot of local hurdles and constraints that you need to work around. But it's a good opportunity. Now we move on to the Q&A session. Since the three gentlemen are here, then anyone has question, you can either write anything. มีไหมครับไม่มีแล้วไม่มี Okay, please.
Thank you, our speaker. My name is Mr. Bird. We do the logistics for cross-border. As I talked with Mr. for the cross-border. Now I think for 1 month or 2 months already, there are miscommunication between Yangon authority and UOB authority regarding apply the Form D with border trade. So just need your suggestion about this, that when you be smoothly or what is the procedure in the future that can support more border trade with Form D.
Yes, I heard this story. And may I explain? Myanmar at the border trade, one Ministry of Commerce, a Ministry of Planning and Financing, this is a custom, and Ministry of Transportation for the logistics, and Ministry of the Administration for the security, and then Ministry of I don't know, the local government, maybe. So all these kind of related ministry they have their own regulation, own law. We cannot compromise. That's why our MIC last 2 months I already announcement. For example, our MIC allowed to the CP and your I forgot already your Thai very big PCO, I don't know. Allowed to. We promised here. Please come in. We allowed to there. We did. We allowed to buy the warehouse. This is our MIC allowed. But at the time, Ministry of Commerce regulation law is cannot import. Foreigner cannot import big amount. They limited. But this law, why they announced, we don't know. This one must be compromise. This one must be negotiation. They must see out. So that ministry coming. I cannot delete this one. We need to talk in there. We need to propose to the parliament or whatever. So this is they can announce by notification. this one delete, finish already. So your problem is that fight department argue each other. So all the time I already informed last month, last month. MIC is we like contractor. You know that we need that this one. Organizer, compromiser, and contractor. So our MIC now change. We are becoming contractor, becoming organizer, becoming compromiser. We need to do this a lot of small things. But for the top policy agree. You know, time Myanmar, you know, Vifa, Aukene, you know Aukene, you know already. And the Tindemia chamber, border chamber, also UMSCCI chamber, even not government, even private chamber, private association, they argue each other, still not finished. And then the container transportation association, highway cargo transportation association, they want to take a lot of opportunity by themselves first. That's why apart from there, I wait and see. So if you write letter, what you difficult officially to me, I can solve this whole problem. But I wait and see. Sometimes you cannot. Now sometimes you know, a lot of people not certified. We are delayed, we are slow. You know that. Myanmar Zagab, you know,这个more不开那就来讲。You know, chicken fighting each other.
Chicken fighting.
They fighting. Then they are tired, and then we come and kill. Are you understand?
Understand.
This is really show the reason to understand it easily. But this is not good for explanation. Sorry.
Any other question? Then, okay. Oh, yes, please.
I would like to know about labor law in Myanmar. It seems to be big trouble over there. But I can see that many garment factory they strike all the time.
Yes. This question, I want to ask the ILO country manager who are appointed from ILO office from Bangkok. He's a Thai lady. Yes. Our Myanmar labor law is some part are not, how to call, I cannot say not reasonable, but not practically. So because of some law are they copy from other country by English to Myanmar. So they should thinking. That's why I complain to them. Chief officer of the labor representative office. She is a Thai lady. She very strong. I argue with her so many times. Labor law is must favor each other. Now is also our practice labor union also they have not good practice like other country. Like Korea, I understand it, like Thailand, like Singapore, labor union. They have the standard standard procedure. We are this country, another one, another country, another one. This is a not stable procedure. This is our requirement. Second thing, maybe my government, current department, they know my answer. They were angry. Labor department not take responsibility for what happened. Anytime happen, they far away. Happen, they far away. They come in, oh, you are boss, give whatever they offer, give money. Money is not their money. Our money, how I can give easily? I understand. So that's why the sorting the problem is not practically, not responsibility by law, the related department, the time. This is a political impact. So Myanmar is now some area are they take advantage of the confused and instability situation by law. This is somebody, maybe someone or some organization provided financing. You may strike. We call 10,000 just per day. I strike every day 10,000 just per day. They walk in, they got only 5,000 just per day. So strike is better than walking. So this is the nature of nature of current situation is practice like this now. That's why we be patient and step by step we organize according to the law. For example, one factory. This is a previously government factory. Government hand over the private sector. When they hand over the private sector, 50-year lease, hand over the private sector, all government staff, including government labor. At the time we ask two questions. You want to follow private sector, or you want to move another government department, or you want to resign or not before we hand over. So for example, 200 of the government staff labor, 50 is that want to retire. Okay, give that patient 3 months salary and any requirement of payment, the government pay everything. Another 50 is that move to another department. Okay, finish. 100 people is that want to follow with the new boss. New boss in the private sector. This 100 people must resign fast from government. Must resign, resignation. So they got the how to call, a lot of big amount of money from government. And then private sector new appointment. But they want to do like government style. Private sector, the law, 1 week, 44-hour working hour. Your time 48 hour. Our Myanmar law still 44 hour per week working hour. But previously under socialist system, that factory 1 week 36 hour. So that labor went to working according to the previously 36 hour per week. So how to maintain the new owner? According to the law, we must order to them. They must working 44 hour per hour, 44 hour per week. But they don't want to do, so they strike everything. Second thing, now new government and new labor law coming already. We must sign contract, labor contract. Owner and labor must sign it to the 21 point, whatever. Must contract. According to the labor law, no contract allowed to work in. The owner must go to jail 3 years. Labor not signing, labor not contract. Owner must go to jail. This point is a fair or not consider. So that's why we change this one. We don't agree. But currently, basically we have to follow the law. We request to them, please contract according to the government procedure. That 100%, that 100 people of all government labor, they don't want to sign. This is our right. Cannot sign. According to the law, we must resign. Let's resign. They are strike. So this is an impact from political activity. I understand. Side effect from unstable political attack. This is my understanding. That's why we cannot think the only one part. We have sorted a lot of unnecessary problem. We have to waste time, sometimes. This is the kind of situation. But maybe not take longer time. Now we take the action. No law, if must follow the law, whatever we should. So sometimes we have to cut action. If too much follow up the nice talking, sometimes cannot. I understand? That's why, yeah. So maybe really action. Strike, go to take action by police officer. And then maybe they cannot strike. They don't want to strike. They scared to strike. So this one, nobody take action. Strike. Happy to see. So this is our problem. Okay? Any question? No.
Please apologize if I'm wrong about the Myanmar employee. It seems to be that they are so demanding and they don't like to work and the turnover is high. And sometimes if they don't want to work, they just stop. No reason. So when you invite us to be there, so we also have the commitment to our customer overseas. Sometimes when they stop, we cannot produce, then we cannot deliver. This is big problem for us. Sometimes we even have to close the factory.
Yes, sorry to hear from you, but I need to ask, your factory is under your official name or not?
Yes, we
Under the embassy or not?
MIC.
Please come into embassy office. You write one page letter. I can go to your factory and I can solve this problem.
Okay, next time when there is such a problem.
Because of now our MIC we have the team to solving the problem. Whatever difficulty, we go there. Who are right, who are wrong? We go there, we sue immediately.
It seems that the labor union there is supported by the labor office.
That's why I don't want to talk everything. But sometimes labor union and labor officer are very fair. Some labor, how do you call it? The condominium, just the baby there, not just that. We have the organized with the both of the inspection team. Two from the business, two for the factory, two for the government, maybe two for the labor union. This organization we have according to the law. But very funny, the officer are followed by labor union because they scale labor union. So because we are under socialist system and under military government, they have power. They thinking labor union is just for volunteer job, but they don't think I'm union secretary, I have power. So this mindset, this practice are very worse. I understand, but anyhow. One, your company or your factory is under the MIC. Please, you write official what your difficulty. We can, our MIC call to the labor officer. Come in. Why do you not this problem? Why do you not solve this problem? What happened? Maybe I will ask to the regional administration officer. Why do you not follow the regulation? We have to write to organize and compromise. So please send the letter to us.
I will do so. Thank you very much.
Okay.
And I also have another question.
Ask any question.
We also.
What kind of factory? You are garment factory?
Yes, not garment factory. We do convert the plastic plastic fabric, into the bags. And we export to Europe.
Okay. I can support you. Don't worry.
Yes, but when we apply for MIC, MIC asks us to declare everything, how much we import, how much we export, with a fixed price. So let's say when we import the raw material, the price per kg as $1, and then we export price per kg for the finished good also $2. So there will be $1, as a balance when we export. But when we import raw material, the customs follow the MIC that when we declare $1 is $1. But when we do the export, the customs say no, this price $2 is impossible, must be $3. So it's mean now the extra $1 is become $2.
Why your $2 is a real price or not?
It's not the real price because
I believe you.
Yes.
But customer want to make money for 10 cents. So you make squeeze to you, they make squeeze to you, $2, $3. You against customer. Why you ask to $3? What is your parameter? What is your certificate? Please show me. You can ask.
We are businessmen, we good at work.
Cannot.
We want to trade.
Please, you hire me. I can do for you. Don't worry. Yes. Your quality, your product, your price must be reasonable. This is not custom job. This is not custom. Custom is you export this one, not including another kind of the product. Custom duty only. The price, Ministry of Commerce, they were checking the price. But when we import, yes, value, they checking the value. So this is one kind of their opportunity to make money for themselves. I understand. That's why now we push to custom. Don't worry, I am not Superman. But
I'm quite worried because I'm already there 4 years. But she made a little bit progress.
Yes, all your custom problem I can solve for you. Yeah. worry.
Okay, thank you very much.
You are right, I can stand with you. You are not correct, I cannot stand with you.
Okay, I think you should get his name card. Okay, any other question? Okay then. I think thank you very much. I hope you have information and have something to thought about. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So thank you very much for your all questions, and on behalf of UOB Tractus Asia and all the guests here, I would like to thank you to the esteemed speakers for taking a time out of your busy schedule, flying over from Myanmar to here, being our speakers today. So we truly appreciate that. While we have the present from UOB from Kunjutana to pass to James and Mr. Win. Just a moment, please. So actually, it is the present from UOB. That's why Mr. Loy got it already. Got it on hands. So please give your big hands to all of the speakers and moderators. Thank you. Well, it's last but not least, I hope you all enjoy the event today. And there is some update news from BOI Thailand. BOI Thailand just launched out the programs to bring along the investor from Thailand to Myanmar during September 3 to 6. And please note that, unfortunately, today is the last day of the registration for those who are interested to go to Myanmar for the investment. So the detail will be enclosed in the UOB bag. So before you leaving the hotel, please grab the UOB bag at the registration desk, please. Alright. I hope everyone enjoyed their conference today. And if in case you have any further question, please do not hesitate to ask our speakers after the conference. Alright. Have a nice evening, and we look forward to seeing you again in the next conference. Thank you very much. Please don't forget to grab the UOB bags outside.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks. Can we take a picture with you first? Yeah.
I'll let you know.
Like one of our clients also.
You stay in Yangon, right?
Just so much easier.
แค่นี้ก็มึนตึ๊บละ
เดี๋ยวถ้ามีต่อ
Have a good trip. Yes. Take care.